After the tone, please record your name.
Hi, my name is Nathan Mischani. I'm a professional services analyst within the B2B team in Informatica. With this presentation, I would like to give you an introduction of the B2B Data Exchange Accelerator for GUDID compliance. This presentation covers three main topics. First, I will explain what the UDI regulation is and what are the key requirements that should be met in order to comply with it. Later, I will clarify what is the Global UDI Database, the GUDID, and describe how the GUDID submissions process looks like. Eventually, I will introduce our B2B Data Exchange GUDID Accelerator and the key features and benefits it provides. I will also show a short demonstration of the GUDID Accelerator capabilities. Let's start with a short background about what is the UDI regulation and what drove its needs. In March 2014, the FDA released a report stating that medical device recalls have doubled in the last decade. One of the main reasons, according to that report, is that the medical device industry as a whole has not adopted data quality and data governance best practices. Medical devices distributed in the US don't have a standard system of identification and tracking. As a result, medical device information is fragmented, inaccurate, and inconsistent, and this leads to a slow, inefficient recalls and unreliable adverse event reporting and tracking. Eventually, it could also cause to a poor healthcare decisions. In response, the FDA decided to increase the oversight of the medical devices industry. It has issued a new requirement, the Unique Device Identification Regulation, to improve identification and tracking of medical devices. To facilitate the new regulation, the FDA introduced a consistent and automated way to identify and track medical devices distributed in the US. Under UDI regulation, every medical device in use in the US will have a unique code embedded within it and displayed on the packaging. By tracking these codes in a central database and recording reports of adverse events, the FDA will be able to identify product problems faster, target recall more accurately, and reduce related errors. The UDI code will be stored in a central database, the Global UDI Database, GUDID, which will be FDA's database for all approved and UDI-labeled devices. Most of UDI information will be made available to the public. So, for example, patients who have a medical device implanted can easily look up information about the device. This planned UDI system will offer a range of benefits to the industry, to the FDA, consumers, and healthcare providers. For example, it will facilitate more rapid and accurate identification of a medical device and promote a more reliable and efficient post-market tracking of devices, which in turn will reduce or even eliminate medical errors. It will also establish a standardized identifier that will allow manufacturers, distributors, and healthcare providers to more effectively manage medical device recalls. And finally, the UDI regulation provides better product information, which streamline product development and supply chain processes and improve customer engagement, sales, and marketing. So what exactly is the UDI code? Medical devices UDI is a unique two-part numeric or alphanumeric code which is displayed in both human-readable, meaning a plain text, and a machine-readable formats on the label and packaging, and for certain devices on the device itself. In this slide, you can see an example of a barcode, which is an acceptable machine-readable format under the UDI regulation. The UDI consists of two parts. The device identifier, DI, which is a mandatory fixed portion of a UDI that identifies the labeler and a specific version or model of a device. The DI will serve as the primary key and can be used to look up information about the device in the GUDID. The second component is the production identifier, PI, which is a conditional variable portion of a UDI that identify one or more production attributes when included on the label. For example, The PI identifies the lot or batch number within which a device was manufactured. It can identify the serial number of a specific device, the expiration date of the device, and the date a specific device was manufactured. To comply with the new UDI regulation and establish a successful UDI system, medical device manufacturers must be able to follow three important steps. First step is to be able to collect, integrate, and optimize the data needed to internally prepare and create the UDI information. The second step is to implement UDI labeling requirements. And the third step, which might be the most challenging in terms of IT, is to submit an accurate, consistent, complete, and timely data to the FDA GUDID. The next slides will deepen the understanding of those three compliance requirements. The entity that is responsible to develop a UDI compliance solution is the labeler. The labeler is the manufacturer of the medical device that wants the device to be commercially distributed. UDI should be created, assigned, and maintained by the labelers based on global device identification standards managed by issuing agencies. An issuing agency is an organization accredited by FDA to operate a system for the issuance of UDIs. In other words, the issuing agency is an organization that operates a system for issuing compliant UDI codes for the labelers. It's important to note, the FDA requires that all UDIs will be issued under a system and standards managed by an FDA-accredited issuing agency. In the slide, there's a list of the accredited issuing agencies. The UDI labeling implementation should meet the following requirements. In terms of device and package labeling, the UDI is required to appear on the label of every medical device and every device package. More information about device package and levels of packaging, including package information examples, can be found in the FDA website. Each code will also need to appear in plain text, as well as at least one form of automatic identification and data capture technology, meaning a machine-readable format, such as barcode or radio frequency identification tag. In terms of date formatting, dates on the device label must be in specified formats. It can be the expiration date, manufacturing date, and any other dates on the label intended to be brought to the attention of the user. In addition, devices intended to be used more than once and reprocessed before each use, for example, that needs to be disinfected or sterilized, must have a permanent direct part marking of the UDI code. This will ensure that applicable devices remain identifiable even if they become separated from their label. So what is the Global UDI Database? The Global UDI Database, whose official name is GUDID, is a publicly searchable database administered by the FDA, which is designed to serve as a reference catalog for every device with an identifier. Under the UDI requirement, the labeler of each medical device that is labeled with a UDI must submit information concerning the device to the GUDID. The submission unit to the GUDID is called a DI record, which includes the device identifier, DI, and additional GUDID attributes. PIs are not submitted to the GUDID. However, the DI record do contain PI flags to indicate which PI attributes or attributes are displayed on the device UDI. The FDA has identified a number of specific attributes to be submitted along with the DI component of the UDI code. Examples for these attributes are the device model number or version, industry and FDA assigned codes, certain device or packaging conditions, device information, and device characteristics. So to recap, the labelers are required to submit the DI records with the DI along with additional device attributes information to the GUDID. More information about the key concept of the DI records, such as the device attributes, the DI record lifecycle, device packaging configuration, and how to manage and edit DI records, All this can be found in the FDA website and documentation. As mentioned earlier, the GUDID serves as the FDA's repository of key device identification information. The GUDID provides two standard-based submission modes for submission of device identification information. One submission option is a structured input via the GUDID web interface. It requires manual data entry of one DI record at a time and is geared for low-volume submitters. The second option is using HL7 structured product labeling submission via the FDA Electronic Submissions Gateway. This option allows submission using XML files and is geared to high-volume submitters. This is also the submission mode addressed by the Informatica B2B Accelerator. Published device information in GUDID will be available for public search and retrieval via the web interface. In addition, planned capabilities for the GUDI include the ability to search for specific device information, full database download, and web services. The image on the right outlines the GUDID system. In order to facilitate compliance with the UDI regulation, the labeler needs to establish or leverage a data governance strategy. The organization needs to understand where the necessary data is located, transform it, update it if necessary, and make sure it is available, accurate, complete, consistent, and ready to be properly submitted to GUDID. Master data programs for product data consolidation and management, existing or newly created, can optimize submission of device data to the GUDID. Now, before we go over the HL7 SPL transmission option, let's first define some key concepts of the process. HL7 is a standard development organization whose mission is to provide messaging standards for interoperability, exchange, management, and integration of data that support healthcare services. SPL is structured product labeling, is the HL7 standard for the exchange of product information using XML language. To submit HL7 SPL files securely to the FDA GUDID, organizations are asked to utilize the FDA Electronic Submissions Gateway, also called ESG. The FDA ESG enables the FDA to process regulatory submissions automatically. It functions as a single point of entry for the receipt and processing of all electronic submissions in a secure environment that complies with secure messaging standards. Upon receipt of the HL7 SPL submission, the ESG automatically routes it to the appropriate FDA center or office, in this case, the CDRH, which then processes it and loads it to the GUDID database. Now, when a submission is performed via the FDA ESG, submitters will receive 3 acknowledgements. First acknowledgement, also known as receipt, will be sent by the FDA ESG. This message denotes that the submission has been delivered successfully. This acknowledgement message will contain the message identifier specified in the submission and a date stamp for when the submission was received by the FDA ESG. These items may and should be used to track a submission. The second acknowledgement will be sent to indicate a successful routing of the submission to the CDRH. This message will contain the message ID, like in the first acknowledgement. It will also contain a core ID, another unique alphanumeric string that is used by the FDA ESG to track a submission. The third acknowledgement will be sent by the GUDID and will indicate the results of the submission processing. Successful transmission will be noted, or if there are any errors, submitters will be notified of errors, which needs to be fixed and submission resent. The third acknowledgement is an XML message that contains the core ID and information about the submitted DI record, to include the primary DI number, document version, processing date and time, the number of failed rules, and status of submission, passed or failed. Using the message ID and core ID along the acknowledgement process, this process actually enables a linkage between the 3 acknowledgements and the GUDID submission. It's important to highlight that tracking and monitoring FDA responses back to each submission is key to accomplishing a successful UDI compliance solution. This slide captures another GUDID submission option. Rather than transmitting directly to FDA electronic submission gateway, another process would be to submit DI records through WOD1 sync, which function as a staging area before routing the submission to GUDID. One WOD sync is the largest product information network and data pool solution provider, and many manufacturers, distributors, and retailers use it to exchange standard compliant data with trading partners. The benefit of this option is for those labelers that already use it in their business processes. It can reduce development costs of building a new point-to-point integration and speed up new device introduction. In this option, the submission message format is GS1, which is the global standard for identifying, capturing, and sharing product information. There are several submission challenges that should be addressed and managed. To comply with the UDI regulation, many manufacturers are choosing to leverage UDI requirements to achieve a more consolidated view of product data within their organizations. Having a holistic technology solution that generates the required HL7 SPL formatted submission data, transmits the message to the GUDID, and monitors FDA acknowledgments for each submission is key to fulfill that goal. Labelers need to ensure that product information required for UDI compliance is available, accurate, complete, consistent, and standardized so it can be properly submitted to FDA's GUDID. Another important challenge is to establish a sustainable process to manage, maintain, and monitor the success of submissions to the FDA's GUDID. This will help to ensure data accuracy, completeness, traceability, and continuous process improvement. Under the UDI regulation, starting September 2014, labelers of Class 3 medical devices have been required to submit UDI data for their products to the GUDID. In the coming months and years, these requirements will extend to manufacturers of Class 2 and Class 1 devices as well. It's worth mentioning that labelers that will fail to comply with the UDI regulation will not be able to sell their products in the US. In addition, the FDA could impose potential enforcement action and penalties for violation of UDI requirements. The B2B Data Exchange GUDID Accelerator is aimed to provide a jump start to a UDI compliance project or solution. The accelerator comprised of three powerful products of Informatica: Power Center, Data Transformation, and Data Exchange. Power Center provides the environment to extract data, transform the data according to predefined business logic, and load the transformed data to identified targets. DT, Data Transformation, provides the capabilities to process complex files and transform any data format to any data format. DX facilitates the transfer and processing of documents for trading partners. DX is also used to manage the flow and transformation of documents and to monitor their processing. This accelerator is based on industry standards and Informatica best practices. It is an instance with pre-configured logic to process and manage UDI compliance information. It consists of configurable and extensible workflow and mapping to create, transform, validate, and maintain all UDI attributes submitted to the FDA GUDID. And as an accelerator, it provides a robust yet flexible pre-built framework that can be adjusted and configured according to the requirements of the solution. In addition, it enables to securely and continuously exchange, synchronize, and track UDI submissions and FDA responses. Let's highlight some of the key features of the B2B GUDID Accelerator. The accelerator takes advantage of Informatica platform to combine powerful tools and create one integrated accelerator solution to comply with requirements. The accelerator supports optimized integration. It utilizes track and trace mechanism for UDI submissions and acknowledgements and allow end-to-end visibility of its exchanged documents or messages. In addition, it can be integrated with more Informatica products and deliver more capabilities. And finally, it's important to note that the accelerator can be configured and enhanced to support many business rules and processes as part of planned UDI compliance solution. The key benefits of GUDID Accelerator are reducing development costs, strengthening IT and business collaboration, and minimize risk and compliance issues. Now I will demonstrate how the B2B DX Accelerator for GUDID compliance is working. This demo will focus on the GUDID HL7 SPL submission option. The GUDID Accelerator has two main mappings in PowerCenter. One mapping is capturing the technical and business logic of how to extract files and UDI information, transform it, and send it to the FDA GUDID. The second mapping is one that receives the acknowledgements from the GUDID, transform it, process it, and send it back to the labeler. This mapping is the one that captures UDI information, transform it, expose it also to DX, and finally send it to the DI using a GMS queue. The second mapping, which is this one, is the one that represents the business logic of the transformation of the acknowledgements. We use one mapping to address and handle all three acknowledgements according to their structure, their format, and the content. This mapping captures the important information in the acknowledgement, such as the message ID and the core ID, that will allow eventually to correlate between the acknowledgements and the submission message. It's important to note that this demo will focus on extracting UDI data from a flat file, from an XML file, map it and transform it into the required HL7 SPL format, and then send it to the GUDID. However, PowerCenter is a very flexible and extensible product that we can also be able to retrieve and extract data from databases, applications, and various formats of data, whether it's structured or unstructured, industry standards, all can be processed, transformed, and sent with the HL7 SPL formatted file. Now we will go into the B2B Data Exchange. Just to give a short review, the Data Exchange facilitates the transfer and processing documents for the trading partners. And in this case, the partners are the labeler and the FDA. We are using the Data Exchange to manage the flow and transformation of documents and to manage the trading partners and send and receive of documents. This is the DX Operation Console, which is a web application that customizes and monitors documents processing for partners. We use it to manage partners, workflow, and profile, and to monitor the events generated during document processing. Let's give some explanation on the key component of the DX that are part of this accelerator. Let's start with the partners. We have two main partners. Now, what is a partner? A partner represents an entity that sends documents to be processed or receives processed documents from DX server. In this case, the partners are the labeler and the GUDID, FDA. Each partner can contain one or more accounts. For example, if you go to the labeler, as we know, is responsible for the UDI requirements and submits device information electronically in an HL7 SPL XML file via the electronic submission gateway. You can also define account. And the same goes for the GUDID. Now, what is a workflow? Let's go to the workflow. This is the workflow that is used to process the GUDID HL7 FPL document in PowerCenter and submit it to the FDA ESG. Workflow represents the transformation logic required to process the document. Now, the Informatica PowerCenter workflow reflects the design and execution logic to process the documents, while the workflow here in B2B Data Exchange represents the PowerCenter workflow. Here, we also have workflow parameters. Those parameters are used to add some more flexibility and additional input values to the PowerCenter mapping. Those parameters were defined and pre-configured here. For example, we can decide whether we want to run the logic when the submitter is the labeler or the submitter is the third party. Or, for example, as device information, we can say that the issuing agency is GS1 or one of the other issuing agencies. And it's important because each agency has a different kind or a different way to issuance UDI, meaning that attributes will be different in the final file that is sent to the GUDID. Therefore, we want to use the same mapping and to make it flexible enough to run it according to whatever parameter we want to use. So let's go and try to run one of the files to process it. I'm going to use for that the endpoint. Now, what will happen? We have here the UDI data. What will happen is that the data exchange server that manages the document processing will take this file from the endpoint and send it to the PowerCenter for processing. After PowerCenter will process the document, the DX server will take the document and put it to the correct location to send to a partner. In this specific demo, we won't be sending it to FDA Electronic Submission Gateway and to the GUDID. We're rather going to send it to the file system. But it all can be configured in the endpoint. What is the endpoint? The endpoint is the point of entry or exit of documents in B2B Data Exchange. In this demo, we will receive the file in the file system. In the real scenario, we will send it to the GUDID database. So let's copy that and put it in the outbound endpoint. As you can see, this is another XML file that has the UDI data in it. DX server take this data, send it to the according profile, the profile of GUDID HL7 SPL submission, and create an event. Now before we go through the different information in the event, let's explain what it is, an event. Event is a representation of a document at a particular stage of processing. The DX server generates the event as it processes document, and it changes the status of the event as they go through the transformation process. So for example, if we go into the event, we can see that it has a pending status at the beginning and then complete, then again pending before it was transferring it to the outbound endpoint, sending it to the GUDID. Another thing to pay attention to is the reconciliation status. The reconciliation is the process of correlating an event with another event. And B2B DX uses a correlation ID to identify each reconciliation. For example, in our case, we send an HL7 SPL submission file to FDA ESG. And we know, as we explained earlier, that upon sending, we will receive 3 different acknowledgements. Each acknowledgement represents another stage of the submission. When we send a submitted file, we initiate the reconciliation. Therefore, it's in pending status. Now, when we're going to start to receive the acknowledgement back from GUDID to our account, to our organization, we'll be able to correlate it with this submission and therefore track and trace this submission progress. And finally, after the third acknowledgement will arrive, we'll be able to complete this reconciliation. This is a very powerful tool to really monitor and check how our submission is progressing with the GUDID. Let's take the first acknowledgement. Again, it's just a demo, so we're going to take an acknowledgement, put it in the inbound endpoint, meaning that we're going to, on this one, we're going to take this one, the acknowledgement, first acknowledgement from the GUDID, going to paste it, DX server take this file, send it to the appropriate profile, the profile associated with the partner and the correct workflow. The workflow is processing here in Power Center, and a new event will be generated. This event is the one that's associated with the acknowledgement document that was received from the GUDID. As you can see here, this is the partner, its account, the profile, start time, and the event type. This is also complete, and as you can see, there is also an aggregate status added to the submission event. If you drill down, we can see that a child event was generated and placed under the submission event. This event is acknowledging one event type. It's also in complete status, and eventually we would like to have all those three acknowledgements here under the submission event to know that all three acknowledgements were received, and then to monitor and see whether they were successfully passed or failed. Now, if we go to event, let's go first to the event here and go to see some more details. We can see here three logging files. This is the input message, meaning the UDI data file that we extracted and transformed. We have another logging information. For example, information that the DI record with the primary device identifier, which is a mandatory and a key attribute with 103, has been processed successfully. Of course, this message can be very easily configured and enhanced with more information, business-related information about the process. And here is the output message. The output message, which is the HL7 SPL formatted file that will be sent to the GUDID. You can also find it here in the file system. This one. You can see it here with all the attributes and information required according to the UDI requirements and the specification in the documentation that FDA provides in their website. Let's drop the other acknowledgement to see how the tracking and monitoring is being progressed. You can see that another event was created in pending mode, file level event. Let's refresh it. We see it complete, and another child event was generated under the submission event with acknowledgement, the second acknowledgement. We can also see here in the acknowledgement, for example, the logging information. We can see how the acknowledgement would look like. We have second acknowledgement was processed successful. More information here. The event attributes. As you remember, the second acknowledgement has both the core ID and message ID. As you can see here, you have information about each one of the attributes. Just to explain shortly what is the attributes. Attribute is like a parameter that we associated with a workflow to collect business-related information, while the associated workflow process documents. So after we process this second acknowledgement, we have those two attributes, the core ID and the message ID. Both are going to be used to link between those acknowledgements and with the submission. Status history. Also here, by the way, in the submission, we can see in the attributes, we have many attributes and many more can be added. Most of those attributes are some of like controlled vocabularies and object identifiers that are mandatory in each and every submission. Of course, that other attributes can be also be captured and presented here. Let's drop now the third and last acknowledgements. Please pay attention to the reconciliation status. We want it to be complete in case the third acknowledgement point out that it was successfully loaded to the GUDID and it's comply with all the requirements. So we see here that the reconciliation status is complete. We can see here also the third acknowledgement was received and generate a root event. And in addition to that, we have the third child event with event type of acknowledgement, the ACK3. Also with the third core ID, the third one has no message ID in it. And also here we can see logging information. If we go to the labeler, to the submission event, we can see here in the reconciliation ID that was used. This was the message ID that is both in the submission file that is sent to the GUDID and also in two of the three acknowledgements that we received from the GUDID. With this reconciliation ID, we can link and reconcile this event. You can see when it's initiated and when it was reconciled on. We can also define a timeout, which means that if we cross this date and we don't reconcile this event, mean that this reconcile has failed, and we need to maybe check and understand why we did not receive the third acknowledgement with the message with the reconciliation ID. More things that the accelerator includes is, for example, a monitor to monitor events. Here we have to see how we can use this event monitor to track events. This one is configured to monitor events of type GUDID HL7 SPL, which are the submission events with errors. And we can also make notification in case we have those errors with this event type and schedule when to notify it and how and to who, what users, what groups. And this is very powerful, so we can track and trace all the events that are being done in this UDI process. Okay, so if you want to read more about the UDI and GUDID regulation, you can go to the FDA website and find a lot of information, including resources such as webinars, documentation. And if you want more information about the B2B DX GUDID Accelerator, you can contact our Informatica representative, Ophir Chen, from B2B team, professional services team, and you can contact him with his email. Thank you very much.